The warriors talk about the fight every parent fears, and too many have been forced to face the war our children fight online. And Maurine Molak knows that pain. Her son David was just 16 when relentless online bullying took his life. Out of that horrific, unimaginable loss came David's Legacy Foundation, a movement dedicated to stopping cyber abuse and demanding accountability from the platforms that profit off of cruelty. At Lynn's Warriors, we stand shoulder to shoulder with Maureen and every parent who refuses to stay silent. Together. We're fighting for prevention, education, and legislation that protects children before the damage is done. This isn't about politics, it's about people. It's about parents. It's about every child who deserves to grow up safe, seen, and free from any form of digital violence. This is Lynn's Warriors, where awareness becomes action and courage becomes protection. The website is davidslegacy.org. I will have everything, Maureen, in the body of the video so people can take their time, all of our warriors out there, and read everything about you, about David, about the work you are doing. So let's just get to you. Welcome, Maurine Molak, to the Warriors.
Hi, Lynn. Thanks so much for having me today. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. I am just really completely honored that you're taking the time to join us. This is your story to tell. So I'm going to ask you to take us back to the beginning or anything you want to start with. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I'll start off with, on January 4th, 2016, and it's hard to believe that's been almost 10 years because it feels like it was just yesterday that my son David died by suicide after a year-long battle with social media and online gaming addiction. And the last few months of his life, he was experiencing tormenting and threatening cyberbullying across multiple platforms, mainly on Instagram, that ended up going viral. And a lot of that happened because David's profile was private, but many of the students who were piling on to the Instagram posts had public accounts. And that's how it ended up going viral. So the way that it was designed was faulty in David's particular situation. But let me take you back to the very beginning of our family. And so David was the youngest of three boys. There was a large age gap between my oldest son and David. So there was about an 8-year gap there. So you can imagine, and if anybody's read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, you know what happened during that period of time. Like I mentioned, David was born in 1999. And so he grew up in a family where the internet was exploding. I mean, when my oldest kids were young and David had just been born, we went up from dial-up internet to high-speed internet. We had the invention of social media. We had ed tech coming into our home. We had those people out there that were telling us that if we didn't inundate our children and we weren't surrounded by technology at a young age, the Chinese would pass our kids up. And so we drank the Kool-Aid in our house. And so we were trying to keep up with all of the technology and how that was developing. And so that was David's formative years. He had he was much more drawn to technology than my older two boys were. And I think that really had a lot to do with his struggles with social media and online gaming, especially at the age of 15, when he had a basketball injury. And while he was rehabbing from this injury, he turned to social media and online gaming to fill that social void. So he was lacking all of those other social interactions that he had out there that were drawing him away from technology. But because of his rehab, he was behind a screen. And over a period of about 8-9 months, we started to see a real change in his behavior. He was showing all the signs of a behavioral addiction, from lying about completing his homework. He was sneaking around using his devices when he wasn't supposed to. He would get angry and aggressive when we would try to get him to stop. And then there towards the end, he started stealing from us in order to purchase virtual assets to increase his player power. There were no financial restrictions. He was able to get around all of the parental safeguards. He spent a lot of time on YouTube watching these professional gamers that were teaching him the tips and tricks and tactics on how to circumvent parental controls and basically how to steal from your parents. And it was at that point in his life when the cyberbullying started, and it was just the final match on a huge bonfire that exploded in our home.
First of all, Maureen, I'm so sorry about all of this. I'm sorry you've had to go through this. Thank you for sharing your story. I really think the word bravery applies to you and to other parents who want to educate, and we need everybody to listen up and listen good to what happened, because now we're 9-10 years from that even, and so much more is happening and exploding, and we have to keep chipping away at this. So I really can't thank you enough for what you do and talking about all of this. Talk to us a little bit about, let's jump into David's Legacy Foundation, because it kind of goes into everything you're doing right now, and David's Law. I'll just leave that for you. You please explain what this is, because I want our warriors to take their time. Again, I'll link everything, to go in there, to read, to be educated, to donate, volunteer, whatever it takes. We must all come together. I really feel, Maureen, 2025, everybody can and must do something.
Yeah. After David died, we knew that we wanted to honor him in some way, and we knew the suffering that went along with his experience online and with the cyberbullying. And so the first thing that we thought we would do would be to advocate for a bill in Texas. And we were successful in our first session, which is basically unheard of. In Texas, we only meet every other year for about 5 months. Out of that period of time. And so you can imagine, with such a big state, not a lot gets accomplished, but we were very successful. And we gave tools to parents, law enforcement, and schools to be able to address cyberbullying, even if it occurred outside of the school day or hours, if it affected a student's educational opportunities. And we knew that David's educacational opportunities had been disrupted. We ended up having to move schools to get away from his perpetrators, but that shouldn't be the answer to this. We should not have to remove a child from a school to get away from perpetrators. So we knew that schools needed some additional resources to be able to address these issues. And law enforcement's hands were tied. I mean, we updated our penal code in Texas with David's Law. I mean, it talked about fax machines and pagers, and there was no mention at the time of cell phones or social media. And so we just knew that the laws needed to be updated at the time. But I'll be really honest with you that, like I said, this was 10 years ago. And the conversations that I was having 10 years ago with the Texas legislators was basically educating them on what was young people were experiencing online, as well as how families were struggling trying to keep their kids safe. And the conversation that I'm having today is very different than the conversation I was having 10 years. We've learned a lot along the way. People are waking up. People are understanding that David's story was not an isolated incident, because we keep hearing about the harms that young people are facing every day, from sextortion to being connected with drug dealers online, to sexual exploitation, to content that is being fed through the algorithms that kids aren't even searching for, like eating disorder content and pro-suicide content. And so the harms are actually out there, and people are experiencing them, unfortunately, and our laws just have not kept up with the advancement of technology.
Yeah, and speeding up as we sit here and just talk, Maureen. They are just, it seems to me these days, it's like being hit over the head with a hammer. Like every day, something else is breaking about big tech, or we're fighting an additional something. I want to go back on something. I want our warriors to understand exactly what cyberbullying is. Would you please explain that for us?
Yeah, well, it's defined it's defined in statute in Texas, and it can be anywhere from electronic rumor spreading. It can be threatening, like David received. It can be a number of things to where it affects an individual child in a way to where they would have to feel like that they needed help from law enforcement or they needed to get help from their school. And what's really damaging about cyberbullying is, and you can look at a bunch of different statistics and they're all over the place, but what we do know for a fact is that kids who are cyberbullied have a much higher rate of thoughts of suicide or actions towards self-harm or suicide than a child who is bullied in person or a child who is not bullied either in person or electronically. And so there is something about the electronic cyberbullying that affects the mental health of a young person so much. And I believe that that is because it's 24/7. You can't get away from it. It can go viral by just the click of a button. And we're really good about teaching, or in the schools, we're good about teaching kids to say, you don't want to post anything because it'll be out there forever. But you have to remember that the child who's on the other side of that, the victim of cyberbullying, is also hearing that same thing. So in their mind, they're thinking, that's out there forever and I'm never going to get away from it and it's going to follow me the rest of my life. And that was what David felt. He felt like he was never going to be able to get away from that, and that it was going to follow him forever. And we could not get it shut down, despite reaching out to platforms for support and help.
Wow. And I'm also thinking, Maureen, we touched upon it a little bit, but even, 9, 10 years ago, we didn't really know like about cyberbullying when all this started, or we didn't really know so much what we know today. And we didn't really know, I don't think, that there was true like addiction to the internet, to these platforms. I mean, all of us just went ahead and bought the PlayStations and all that stuff and said, here's your Christmas gift, here's your birthday gift. When looking back, I cringe at what we know now kind of thing. But we should point out there is a true addiction to the internet, because the story you told about David, I have heard this countless times: aggressive behavior, appearance, school, lying, cheating, stealing from parents. That brings me, I'm jumping around a little bit, but let's bring it up to today, 2025. We've got some great pieces of legislation pending. Now, would you like to tell us about the Kids Online Safety Act, KOSA, KOSA?
Yeah.
Because how are we going to make, Maureen, I'm asking it every day, how are we going to make everybody understand what's going on? That is very difficult. We'll chip away at that. But the other side of that is big tech must bear responsibility for making billions of dollars off the backs of our children, right? There's no regulation. What is going on here? So explain a little bit about the Kids Online Safety Act.
Yeah. Before I get into that, Lynn, let me back up to something that you said just a minute ago, because I think it's important to know. So like during those formative years of David, it used to be that you could walk into a store and purchase a CD that would play in an Xbox or a PlayStation. And during his teen years is when things changed. So we went from that, where he would be able to play in a room with his brothers, to multiplayer online gaming, where he was connected with people out there in the world, people he didn't know, and people who were influencing him in ways that I had no idea that was going on. And also during that period of time in his early teen years is when algorithms were introduced. And so he is a poster child of growing up in that period of time, to where we saw those rapid advancements and things really change. When we were working on David's law, we had some provisions in it that would actually hold the social media companies accountable for cyberbullying that occurred where it was anonymous. And it would require the social media companies to turn over the IP address, the user information of those cyberbullies, so that law enforcement or schools could step in and intervene in those situations, because we know the mental health consequences related to cyberbullying. I just went over those statistics. the social media companies, this was my first experience with them, came out and lobbied very hard against those provisions in David's law. And we had to pull those provisions out in order to be able to pass what we got passed. You know, most people understand that when you're working on legislation, you don't get everything you want. You have to compromise. You want to stand firm on the things that you feel really strongly about, but in order to be able to really get something passed, you do have to be willing to compromise. And we were, but I vowed at that time that there would be a point later on in my advocacy work that I would be able to be involved in legislation that would hold the social media companies accountable for the harms that were occurring on their platforms, and that they were actually doing nothing or actually exploiting kids in a way, which is what the business model does, right? It's all about engagement. We want to keep kids engaged on these platforms. So that takes me to about 3 years ago when I started advocating for the Kids Online Safety Act. And it's just a common sense piece of legislation that it requires safety by design, and it requires safety by default. And by safety by design, I mean, it has a duty of care in there that requires the social media platforms to design their products with kids' best interest in mind, to mitigate, take reasonable efforts to mitigate these harms that our kids are facing online, which would be connecting them to drug dealers, the design choices that contribute to compulsive use, like endless scroll and the short form videos that are constantly showing up, the algorithms that are pushing content that kids aren't even searching for, those types of design choices that they make that are harmful to kids. And then safety by default, which would mean that it would, when a user would open up, a minor user would open up a social media platform, it would default to the very highest protective settings that social media company or that social media platform has available. Now, if a parent wants to go in and relax those safeguards, the parent has the authority to be able to do that. But what we don't want is for parents to have to figure out how to keep their kids safe on every single platform, which are thousands of them out there. We don't want this to be a rich person's issue, right? That they have the solution, that they have the wherewithal to be able to go in and have blocking mechanisms and filters on their devices that they have to pay for, right? To keep their kids safe. We want this for all American families. So that's why safety by default is really important so that we can protect all of America's families.
Yes, and I want to point out, Maureen, that everybody needs to know the Kids Online Safety Act, all of this child legislation is bipartisan. I mean, it really belongs to no political party. Kids Online Safety Act is Senator Marsha Blackburn, Senator Richard Blumenthal. Everybody can come together and is coming together on the issue of child safety. And I also want to point out, because people, Maureen, say this to me every day, why are they allowed to do this, get away with this? And we know it's a little bit getting out there. You know, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, 1996, it's almost 30 years old, said, okay, we gave them, permission. You are a billboard, you're a newsstand. So we can't be held responsible for this kind of third-party content. That's breaking it down a little simply, but we have to get away from that, Maureen. I know there is Senator Josh Hawley's working on some things to sunset that, amend that, but that kind of blows my mind all the time. That's almost 30 years old. And all of the exploitation is just, despite this knowledge, despite everything we know, everybody coming together, it's escalating. So we have to put guardrails. We have to do something. Did you hear, Maureen, were you part of, I was on a call the other day with the Issue 1 report about.
I heard about it. Yep.
The Issue 1 report. I'm going to link that also in the body of this, where, for instance, Mark Zuckerberg has employed one lobbyist per every 6 members of Congress, equaling 87. Now, I point this out is because we are fighting millions, up to billions, I'm sure, eventually, or maybe now, uh, of that. And we don't have the resources for all of that, but we do have mouths and we do have truth and facts on our side. So I think that can always win. But that's the way I think, Maureen. But let me ask you something. I want to go back to when how do you go grief-stricken parent to creating legislation? Because so many parents will say to me, nobody listens to me. No, nobody cares. I can't do it. But you obviously have done this. And am I correct to say Texas is the first state to pass a comprehensive anti-cyberbullying law? Is that correct?
That's
It's
correct.
so
Yeah.
I'm very curious how you, I'm very serious, like how you did that, or was this your therapy kind of thing? To keep
Oh,
busy, keep working, keep advancing, keep talking about it.
yeah, I think a little bit of everything. Yeah, it was my therapy, but it was also wanting to honor David in a way and making sure that no other family had to experience what we did
Yeah.
in Texas. And I think that at the time people were ripe for the information, and they knew cyberbullying was a real problem, but they didn't know how to address it. So we went in with solutions. We told them what the problem was, and then we said, and here is a potential solution. And we gave them changes to our education code, our civil code, and our criminal code. And we were able to advance that. But I'll also say, parents' stories are really important. And being able to share those stories with your state legislator or members of Congress is really important for them to hear. I mean, a lot of time, probably don't believe this, but they actually do work for us, and we need them. Often we have to remind them that, and we hold the power of the vote. And we expect them to represent us in a way, and being able to understand the plight of families trying to keep their kids safe is really important. So, whether you've had a child who has been harmed on social media or you care about this issue, it's really important for you to use your voice and contact your representatives and let them know how and you may not have the right language to use. You may just say, I care about what happens to kids online, and I need to know what you're doing to address that. So being able to broach that subject with your representatives is really important. And that's what we did. We started off that way. I met with almost every Texas senator and state representative that I could in 2017. And since then, I've built a relationship with a lot of those offices. And I've gone back every session since then. So this past year in 25 was my 5th year of advocating for various bills in Texas. And I've been thankfully successful in passing suicide prevention and the requirement to teach digital citizenship and increased reporting. And also Texas joined 12 other states, and we have bell-to-bell phone-free schools, which we just passed this year, and we're currently implementing it. And so next year, I'm already working on a couple of things that I want to do here in Texas, especially if we can't get the Kids Online Safety Act passed at the federal level, and working also on some AI chatbot bill here in Texas.
Yeah, I want to go into that. First of all, I feel like Maureen, Texas does a lot of good work. I I feel like they do, because we fight tooth and nail here in New York. We also just started the bell to bell this school season, so that is a big positive. And you point out there's a lot of great things happening. We have to remind everybody, despite everything else we talk about, because we want more and more protections and great things to happen. There is a lot happening. More people are awake, aware, sharing stories, sharing facts. So there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of good things happening. I want to talk to you. You work with a lot of other parents across the country, not just in Texas. And what are you hearing about this new landscape? I'm calling it AI, artificial intelligence, because I think right now, everything, I really feel like this, Maureen, this is what we have to focus on. The AI, the chatbots, the AI companions, anonymous apps. there's so much. It's like these predators and developers are always 10, 20 steps ahead of us. What are you hearing from other parents? Because I think it's the most important talk, parents.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 years ago when I started working on the Kids Online Safety Act, I was connected with parents from all over the United States whose children had died from various online harms. And, we worked together in 2013 to try to pass. Actually, we started in late of 2022. And then when we didn't get the Kids Online Safety Act passed, we last year, well, let me back up for 1 second. So I co-founded ParentsSOS with Fair Play, which is a leading child safety organization that works in the online space and trying to help regulate some of these platforms. And so we're made up of, we're 20 families who have experienced various harms. And right before the judicial Senate hearing, early 24, in January of 24, when the five big tech CEOs came to testify, many of us were there in that room when Josh Hawley asked Mark Zuckerberg to turn around and apologize to the parents. And couldn't have been more than 15 feet away from Mark Zuckerberg, behind him, when he turned around to apologize to the parents. And all I could think about was his shallow apology, as well as the fact that David had been harmed on his platform, Instagram. And I was just insulted by his apology. And so all last year, we got really close to passing the Kids Online Safety Act. It was 91-3 out of the US Senate, and we just could not get it out of the House. And so these parents, these brave parents that I have worked with over the last several years, go to DC. And we walk those same halls of those lobbyists that you just mentioned that are being funded by Meta and the other big tech CEOs. And we're regular people taking time off from our jobs, taking time off from our families, many of us paying our own way to go to DC, to walk those same halls where millions of dollars is being spent to advocate against what we're trying to do. So it is a real unfair fight financially for the parents, but we have the stories, we have the experiences and the real life events that motivate us to continue to walk those same halls. And we will walk those halls until we can get Congress to step up and take action and pass some federal legislation, whether that is the Kids Online Safety Act and AI chatbot bills. If we haven't regulated social media yet, now we're on the cusp with AI and those harms that are affecting our young people, especially through these chatbots. Then we have to come together and fight as a cohesive unit to be able to get something passed.
Well, I also always say, Maureen, like, have we not learned from the history of big tech? I mean, they put profit over people. We're behind even on the AI, but at least more people are on board these days. Really, but have we not learned? And it is that big fight. So again, thank you for, marching in those halls of Congress and to come up against money like this. And I don't even like saying, but this is the truth, I'm saying this, not you, but it's like, money talks and crime walks. I'm saying it. And I really feel like the money has just infiltrated all over and people
Yeah.
turn a blind eye. But grassroots in the communities, in the homes is where it matters. We have to remind everybody about that. Talking about it matters. Sharing facts and information. Shout out to Fair Play. I love Fair Play. I interview them frequently. I participate, with them in things, and they're doing tremendous work. So thank you for that. Let me ask you something. If you're talking to some moms right now, here's the thing. We have a lot of moms here in New York that single parent household, they can't watch the devices all day. They might have two jobs, right?
Yeah.
They're dead tired. We never really talk about that a lot because obviously we do have a lot of resources. They don't have time for anything. how are we going to get through? In my world, my warriors world, we take care of all these people, but it doesn't, that's not reality. Is it the schools now? What do you want to see? Because we need more, right? We have a lot of great stuff. How are we going to get that out to the masses?
Yeah, I think one thing is that we have to make sure that these companies have a duty of care to design their products so that parents, single parents, or me from Texas, where there's so many parents whose English is not their first language, struggle to keep their kids safe online, right? It should be a given. It is the only industry and the most powerful industry that is not regulated and required to do that. And so that must happen. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is by people speaking up and using their voices. The other thing is that we know eventually everybody will be on social media, regardless if we're going to be, if we're able to pass some design code legislation. Eventually, these kids will be out of the house and 18 above. We still need to teach them how to interact well. So that's why digital literacy, and digital citizenship is really important to be able to teach those things in our schools. And we're seeing a lot of that happening today. I also think that we have to be very aware of what these social media companies are doing and that how they are designed, and having those conversations with our young people to let them know that they are actually being exploited by these social media companies, right? Their business model is to keep them engaged at all costs, right? So that they are a user for life. And having those conversations with young people and letting them know that they are being taken advantage of is a really important conversation to have with young people in our homes. These social media companies, as soon as we get close to a new hearing or a new advancement in a law, whether that's a state law or at the federal level, they come out with a new safeguard, right? Or a new program to help parents. And I just want to be clear that we have yet to have found any of those safeguards that actually work on a consistent level. You may have little pieces in here that maybe do a little thing, but the way that they give out these big PR stunts to actually, it basically saying to parents, hey, we've got you. Your kids are safe on our platform. We don't need legislation. We're Congress. We're taking care of this on our own. We don't need you to intervene. That is all false information. And we do need Congress to step in and require them to do. And so the other part of that is, if these platforms are so safe, why are they lobbying against the Kids Online Safety Act in a way, as you said, have spent millions of dollars lobbying against the Kids Online Safety Act? And so understanding like, hey, that doesn't even make sense that they're, if they're putting out these safeguards, they're saying that their platforms are so safe because they have these new safeguards, then why would they not say, well, we're so safe, we don't have to worry about being held accountable because we've already made our platform so safe? It is just such a false PR move, a stunt by them. And it's really important for people to understand that, as well as the fact that anytime a law is passed in a state, you'll have the Net Choice, which is a proxy for Meta and other big tech companies, will come in and challenge those lawsuits. And so they get held up in court. They're stalling, and making sure that nothing goes into effect as best as they can. And we've had some of our laws in Texas are actually held up in court right now that would help protect kids online.
Unbelievable. That's what they do. That's their strategy. They hold things up with lawsuits, and they've got all that tremendous money, as we've both pointed out. And as you pointed out, why would they even spend that money if, they put out press releases, everything is okay, parents. But I'm glad you brought that up, because parents, again, who are busy, will look at a press release and think, oh, good. like
Yeah.
this is something good, and then go to the they're not paying attention. That is so criminal, though. We have seen
Yeah.
this time and time again. I was just looking at the Guard Act and going all through that
Mhm.
with the AI. So I'm looking at all of that. And also I was looking at the character AI, and they said, well, we're gonna let the kids be on for 2 hours a day until November 25th. I don't even know what they're talking about. But then I'm thinking, Maureen, geez, 2 hours a day is a lot. Just
Yeah.
for that one thing, when we don't even know. There's so many different studies. Kids are spending 9 hours a day, 7 hours a day. I heard
Right.
somebody say her daughter spends 12. I said, well, if your daughter spends 12, you got to do something about it without blaming. But,
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point where if you hear 12 hours a day, how do you eat, sleep, and go to school or do anything?
Yeah.
Um, it's incredible. Your voice is so important in the expertise that you're sharing with all of us. Finally, Maureen, for parents listening right now, we also have a lot of grandparents that listen to us because they write to me all the time. They're, families here in New York, I guess across the country, are made up of different dynamics today. We have a lot of grandparents raising kids. We
Yeah.
have here in New York, I know we work with a lot of older siblings that have taken on their younger ones. So it's different, all different dynamics with guardians and parents today. Um, what's the one message you want them to hear about mental health, digital, whatever you want to share, and the legacy that David left behind?
I think the one thing for sure is that until these platforms are required to be safe,
Mhm.
keep your kids and your grandchildren away from them. That it is not a matter of if they will experience harm. It is when they will experience harm and how much harm, and do we want to take that risk. So the best thing you could do is to keep them off of those platforms until they are required to be safe. uh, I know how difficult that is, and when you're fighting your child who wants to be on a particular platform, and because all of his friends are on there, it's when you can try to gather those families up that you're close with, that your friends are close with, and try to make a pact on how you're going to keep your group of kids safe online, and have conversations with the kids on having each other's backs. And if they see harm being exhibited online or experienced online, then they need to be able to speak up and take care of each other. But in my mind, these platforms, nobody should be on these platforms until they're required to be safe, and just to know that you're not alone. Like, this is an ongoing problem that Congress has failed to take action on, and we need to speak up, and we need to contact our representatives and let them know that enough is enough. Right now, KOSA has about 66 co-sponsors in the Senate. It's filibuster proof. We're asking for Senator Cruz to bring it up for a committee markup, which we know it would pass, and it would pass the floor again, just like it did last year. And we can't wait on the House any longer. They had told us early this year that they would have language, and we don't have that yet. And so we just can't wait. Families can't wait any longer. And if we're truly care about, we have a moral imperative to take care of vulnerable populations. And our children online are vulnerable. And we have a duty, and Congress has a duty to act to take care of kids online.
Yeah, and I'm going to reiterate something you said earlier. They work for us. So
Right.
I want to remind everybody they work for us. I will have, house.gov, senate.gov also in the body of the video. The website is davidslegacy.org. I want to say, Maureen, again, sharing heartbreak is what I have to call. I can't imagine what you're doing, saving lives. David's Legacy Foundation and David's Law reminds us, but behind every screen is a child, right? A family, and the future. We have to remind everybody our children are our future adult Americans, our future leaders. And so we have to talk about that, because where will we be in 5, 10 years with all of the AI? Um, so we stand with you, Maureen, and all the parents determined to protect children. We are here for you. Digital harm, rampant. We're shutting it down. Exploitation, and together, power in numbers. I know people say that is the truth. We have to keep talking about it, raising awareness. I know it sounds very, broken record. We just have to keep talking about it, and put our faces in front of people. Because in America, every child's life is sacred. And I like to say, Maureen, these are all our children. I
That's
kind
right.
of look at it, we do have this moral, we need to look out for those that are so vulnerable as well. And all kids are vulnerable. Um, Again, I will have all of your information about David's legacy in the body of the video, everything you're working on. And I want to promise me, Maureen, you'll come back more often. We have to keep up on these subjects. Things are changing on a daily basis, and just keep sharing information and voices. It is the most important thing. I wanted to say to you, you are truly a warrior, and thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Lynn. Really appreciate it.
And we will talk again soon.